Atmanirbhar Bharat and our vassal state to Donald J. Trump. The greatest irony, perhaps in the entire history of independent India, is this coexistence of two absolutely contrary possibilities. Our declared status of being self-reliant or Atmanirbhar, and the reality on the ground of having to obtain permission from the President of the United States of America to buy oil from a country of our choosing, in this instance, Russia. Now, it is possible to impose various interpretations on this pathetic state in which we find ourselves. That it is a pathetic and deplorable state, there can be no doubt. But how have we come to such a sorry pass? And that's something that we need to understand. Some people try to explain this with reference entirely to Epstein files. I'm not entirely convinced of this. For one thing, the facts are still in the realms of speculation. For another, I believe that the life of a nation is far too complex, particularly in the modern context of every country being lodged in an interdependent international order, to be explained with reference to a single episode or single etiology or single cause. Maybe the Epstein file has played some role, I don't know what, but I'm sure that's not the only fact. In this video, I'd like to confine myself to things that I can be fairly sure about, and also things that other people find it convenient to ignore. For a moment, let us recall the father of the nation, the Mahatma. After all, this idea of Atmanirbharata, self-reliance, is derived from his vision for India and the world. It is obvious that Gandhi's vision of self-reliance is tied inextricably to a certain way of life, which is characterized by simplicity, a sense of stewardship as far as resources of nature are concerned, concern for fellow human beings, particularly the poor and the underprivileged. Now, we have renounced all of that in the name of development, and we found it somehow acceptable to define development entirely in terms of the proliferation, the multiplication of material wealth, without paying the slightest heed to distributive justice, which is necessary to make the face of development human and compassionate. We got drunk on the heady wine of development and started counting our progress in terms of the billionaires that we were giving birth to, and also in terms of the elaboration of the material circumstances of life. We were persuaded that development means earning more and more, spending more and more, affording ourselves more and more wasteful and expensive luxuries, including overseas tours, expensive cars, a wasteful way of life. Now, given that, Gandhi's idea of Atmanirbharata had to be redefined. So when it came to the turn of Modi, he latched on to the words or the sound, but he did not pay attention to the sense of it. he realized that, particularly when it comes to competing with China, we are in a hopeless situation. Though he started off with the most heroic of promise that in 5 years' time he would so develop India that this country would catch up with China. Now it is the 12th year, and we know where we stand in relation to China. So the idea of Atmanirbharata was actually floated to deflect attention from this invidious comparison between India and China. Be that as it may, the point I want to make here is this. We signed ourselves into the globalization process in the early 90s. I remember the furious debate that took place then. I remember writing an article for The Pioneer where I argued that globalization is neo-colonialism and the nations of the world will once again be recolonized by the erstwhile colonial masters who now do not have to come to the various regions of the world in order to colonize the peoples therein. They can do so from a distance. And this, from the distance, invisible colonization is far more difficult to handle than the in-person colonization. That was my argument way back in the early 90s. And I still stand on the same insight. I see no reason for changing my argument. Now, you might find my argument retrograde. It's not as though I'm not appreciative of the changes that have come about in the circumstances of our life. But what I, with folded hands, plead with all of you to realize is that this has come at a cost, at a very heavy price. And what we are seeing today is a natural and necessary outcome of that process. And therefore, I find no merit and no justice in putting the blame entirely on the shoulders of Narendra Modi, even if I'm not a Modi fan. Truth be spoken, let that be our freedom, let that be our culture. Narendra Modi is not to be blamed entirely for the sorry state in which we find ourselves. Yes, he has to share a lion's share of the blame and the burden because he has been in the saddle for the last 12 years. So he cannot shirk off his responsibility. And particularly after enunciating this Atmanirbharata as the guiding principle for India, and rather than take his own word seriously, he took the country in another direction. Let that be. It's not. I don't want to hide that fact. But my argument in this video is something different. My point is simply this: that whether you merit Atmanirbharata or self-reliance or not, whether you're eligible for the freedom that is implied in the concept of self-reliance, because after all, reliance on others, other reliance versus self-reliance, to be reliant on anybody other than yourself is a condition that seriously compromises your freedom. For example, if India is reliant on Russia, as we were for a long time as far as the military hardware is concerned, then it is natural that that country influences us and pulls the strings in whichever way it can. If we are reliant on America for certain technologies or certain forms of help, as was the case, say, in the 70s, 60s, 70s, in that period, then it is natural that the donor nation pulls wires and wires according to its own interests. It was because of this that Nehru enunciated the non-alignment idea, the idea that India should not belong to any of the two power blocks which were competing for world domination. And the wisdom of that cannot be questioned. Of course, now it's become a fashion to slight, insult, belittle Nehru. I wish we had a Nehru in our midst today. So the thing that we must realize is this. Today, we as Indians face a very stark choice. Either we continue on this path of chasing development as it is understood in the materialistic culture, where the amount of wealth that you generate, no matter how it is done, alone determines the merit of the government in power and the people concerned. Or we think of the alternate model that the Mahatma enunciated, which looks at development in an entirely different light. Now, this development, for example, is the development of the people, not the development alone of material things, the material aspects of life. So, moral development, intellectual development, cultural development, spiritual development must be seen as an integral part of the development of a people. After all, we are developing a people. We are not developing a country in the abstract. And when you try to develop a people in this holistic manner, the first thing that you realize is that this excessive reliance on material things, on consumerism, on this wasteful and excessive way of life, on this mad rush after the gloss and glitter of modern culture, modern consumerist culture, has to be tamed, has to be cut down drastically. For example, if any one of us is serious about protecting the independence, the integrity of India, we must realize the price that we have to pay for it as of now. Let's forget about all that has happened. And today ask the question, what shall we do to become truly self-reliant, Atmanirbhar? The first thing to do, I believe, is to take the decision, the all-important decision, the decision that a majority of Indians are sure to resent and resist, that we are willing to scale down our way of life, that we are willing to go back to the basics, that much of the things that we think we should accumulate, we should have, we should own, is recognized as superfluous, dispensable. We don't really need much of what we run after. Rather than draping ourselves with luxury, superfluous things, if we can actually focus on what we actually need. And in this context, let us remind ourselves of that wonderful statement by Mahatma Gandhi. The world has plenty to meet everybody's needs, but not enough to meet one man's greed. It is so important. So the first thing we have to do if you really want to become self-reliant is to understand the difference between need and greed. I am sorry to say, but I have to say because this is the unvarnished truth, that globalization is predicated on the romanticization and the deification of greed. Greed has become the god of the modern man. And whatever we are seeing in the global order today, including the mad exercises that America is doing, Russia, China, whichever country is able to do whatever, this desperate struggle to control the resources of the world, depending on the military might of each nation, results directly out of this aberration that the world order is organized not in terms of human needs, but in terms of greed. And greed, by definition, will always be located in a small segment of the society. As a result of which, in India, about 50% of our national resources are today owned by the top 5%. That's what greed does to a society. You look at the global picture, it's pretty much the same. You think of the amount of money that is being today wasted on wars. Ukraine, Gaza, Iran, uh, uh, several trouble spots in Africa. Think of the money that's being wasted. By modest computation today, America is spending close to $1 billion per day to wage this war against Iran as of today. And if the war lasts 1 month, $60 billion gone. Iran spent minimum $1 trillion to develop its nuclear and missile program. Yeah, and yet the people were poor and starving. Why? Because military might is necessary to dominate a region, and dominating a region brings in economic rewards. America wants to dominate the world because by dominating the world, America will also exercise hegemony over the resources of the world. I remember during the Iraq War, I was at that time part of the think tank convened by I.K. Gujral, who was prior to that the Prime Minister of India. And we used to meet once a fortnight to discuss international matters. And he used to tell us that he was at that time, during the Iraq War, he was the the External Affairs Minister. And he went on a mission to negotiate peace among the warring forces. And the last leg, he met with Jim Baker, who was at that time the Secretary of State, United States of America. So I.K. Gujral had formed a kind of vague, loose consensus among all other forces to bring this conflict, to avoid this war. With that, he went to Jim Baker to convince him that war should be avoided. And he said to I.K. Gujral, we will not allow these barbarians to sit over the oil resources of the world. We will bomb them back to the Middle Ages. We will bomb them back to the Middle Ages. This is actually the reality of the world. Now, it's not because Jim Baker or America has something of a kind of prehistoric atavistic hatred towards these other people. The simple thing is that America wanted to dominate the oil reserves, the oil supply, or the oil production and distribution in this region, much the same way America today has exercised a stranglehold on Venezuela. And the same pattern is sought to be repeated vis-a-vis Iran. Whether America would succeed or not is something that we have to wait and see. So ultimately it is this, it is greed. Don't think these are wars. There's nothing but the death dance of greed. To me, that's a simple and sufficient way of understanding what's happening throughout the world. It's greed, 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 and greed has become our God. And we also have imbibed the same ideology, the same outlook. At the same time, we'll also talk about Atmanirbhar Bharat. But the Prime Minister who talks about Atmanirbhar Bharat would have himself covered with the most expensive luxuries brought in from other countries of the world. Everything that he uses would be from other nations, the most expensive, exotic things in the world. But he would preach Atmanirbharata to others. This hypocrisy is unavoidable so far as we remain lodged in this system wherein greed is God. If this is not understood, people are not talking about it. In fact, I had many requests from people that I should talk about the Iran war. I wish to say nothing about the military equipment, war hardware, strategies, and make predictions about where this is going. That's not my business. My business is to tell you where the heart of the matter is. Whatever you are seeing today on the global arena is nothing but the death dance of greed. It is here that we need to really locate our thinking vis-a-vis self-reliance. If India is to become self-reliant, we have to accept a simple way of life and The necessary condition for embracing a simple way of life is shifting from greed to need. That's what simplicity really is. Simplicity, understood as simply as you can, is coming back from greed to need. And if you really can organize the life of this nation in terms of meeting the needs of the people, then we can live completely free from foreign control. Today, our Prime Minister has to obey the dictates of Donald Trump because we belong, willy-nilly, we belong to the system wherein greed is God. And so, and as long as that remains the system, I have to say we are hopelessly lost. And when greed is God, what happens is, the next corollary is, might is right. Please understand. My first principle is, greed is God. Second principle is, might is right. Today, America dominates the world because it has the mightiest army in the world, with a global reach, rapid deployment, incredible technology of destruction, so on and so forth. And America has invested heavily in its military power, not because it has fallen in love with military power itself, but because that is a necessary condition for dominating the world. Dominating the world is necessary to deify greed as the god of America. So, might will always remain right. And it is in that context that Donald J. Trump, the President of America, has absolutely no qualms in saying, yes, you can buy oil from Russia for 30 days, but not 31 days. From the same mindset, Donald J. Trump can say, with his chest outspread, that he will decide who the next supreme ruler of Iran should be. And so on and so forth. Might is right. The moment you accept greed as your God, the irresistible necessity arises, the imperative need arises for you to accept the fact that might is right. So then forget about justice, forget about international rules-based order, so on and so forth. Might is right. I find it very amusing that people who are extremely happy with the system of greed is God, complaining about the international rules-based order being trifled with. I am totally convinced that it's a necessary, inescapable outcome. So, we have come to a point, this is what I would like all my fellow Indians to understand. We have now come to a point where all our fundamental principles have been seriously compromised. It is not that the Prime Minister is compromised. We are all party to an arrangement by which all our basic principles are compromised, and we decided to compromise our principles in order to attain the glitter and the glamour of development as understood in the consumerist, materialistic, scientific, technological paradigm of understanding development. There is something seriously wrong with that. Unless and until we understand it, with Gandhi as our guiding light, of course, it's very unfashionable these days to talk about, even to remember Gandhi. I'm convinced that if you really want to be self-reliant, if you really want to keep your freedom, if you really want to preserve your integrity, if you really want to value your sovereignty, you have to go back to the Mahatma. There's no other way. The tragedy in this country is not that Narendra Modi is compromised. The tragedy is that we have forgotten, we have left Mahatma Gandhi far behind. It is not as though Gandhi wanted to keep India poor. It certainly was a case that he wanted India to be a sane nation which would serve as a counterbalancing influence to a world order which he anticipated would be of this kind. Unfortunately, we lost our moorings, and we ourselves therefore got sucked into this maelstrom of power play, of greed, of inhumanity, of violence, of destruction. this diabolic system. Please ask yourself. I was having a discussion with my little sister yesterday. We together remembered the very, very difficult times that we shared as children. We had nothing going for us, but the quality of life that we had. And we agreed that nothing in this world that people have achieved, nothing that we ourselves have achieved, compensates the loss of that wonderful state. Looking back, we realize in those days we thought we were in a state of deprivation. Looking back, we realize that now we are in a state of deprivation as compared to what we were in those days. Today we are in a state of human deprivation. In those days we were in a state of material deprivation. I'd rather have material deprivation than human deprivation. So let's be honest with ourselves. One man alone, so Narendra Modi alone, is not to be blamed for India finding ourselves in this rather absolutely shocking state of having to get permission from the President of America to buy a little oil from Russia. That's what we have achieved in 75 years of 75 years of freedom. Just imagine. But even today, we are in no mood to understand how we landed ourselves here. It is that reluctance that worries me. So, India must decide for itself. If we want to be independent, if we want to preserve our national integrity, if we want to preserve the nobility, purity, dignity of the soul of India, we have to learn to live within our means on a firm foundation of universal values, respecting the quintessence of humanity that once mattered to us, and realizing that we are not only stomachs and mouths, but also a great spiritual phenomenon. I believe that the spiritual destiny of India must be fulfilled for the sake of the global community. But India is failing, and India is failing particularly because of the new religiosity that has overtaken us. Religiosity which is being prostituted for the sake of political gains. It's a terrible tragedy for this country that at this most crucial time, religion, Hinduism, which could have served as a guiding light for India, has become a handmaiden to very narrow, dishonest, devious political agendas. Surrendering, abjuring, giving away its responsibility and role to lead India along the path of righteousness. That to me is the heart of the tragedy. And given that, I can understand and accept everything else. I wish we did not have to come to this sorry pass. But I know we have. And I also know that Modi alone is not to be blamed for our reaching where we have. Jai Hind.